So as the dust settles on the War Games, the Prince re-enters the battlefield. Who will attempt to dethrone him? Actually, more pertinent to that, do you know the way? This is NXT Graded. Finn Bálor heads out to start with, saying the team sports are over and the champion is back. He invites anyone in the back who wants to get to know him to meet him in the ring. This brings out Pete Dunne, who says, "We are cut from the same cloth, but I will be the one that puts you back on the shelf." Kyle O'Reilly enters the fray here, addressing Peter Pumpkin Eater, which I hope sticks when live crowds come back, saying that it was the Undisputed Era that won War Games, and it was Kyle O'Reilly that put Balor out with a broken jaw. O'Reilly states his case as to why he wants another shot at the Prince, and Damian Priest then comes out and says that Balor versus Priest is a marquee match. The three challengers start bickering back and forth, Dunne reminding Priest that he couldn't beat Leon Ruff. Dunne then talking to O'Reilly, saying, "Shouldn't you be in the hospital?" Kyle O'Reilly hit him with an English accent, which was rather good, actually. And as they're going back and forth with one another, Finn Bálor leaves the ring, heads up the ramp, and says, "You guys rudely interrupted me. Whoever's going to be the next challenger for me, it's going to be decided by Regal." Suddenly, Karrion Kross's music hits, and here comes Scarlett. She walks around Balor, sizes him up, and then Balor says, "I know why you're here. If Karrion Kross is ready, I'm ready." And then he leaves. But before Scarlett can leave, we have Damian Priest in the ring, who says, "Hey, Smoke Show," which is a lovely little callback to the Impact days. I like that. He makes a comment about Scarlett doing her man's dirty work and tells Karrion Kross if he's looking for a fight to meet him in the ring like a man. Scarlett smiles at the thought of this. We'll see what happens next. Giving this a B+, a plethora of potential provocateurs for the NXT Championship. So good to see Balor back in his element as well. And a return for Karrion Kross, seemingly. More on that later. Pete Dunne gets into a scrap with Killian Dain backstage. Remember the last time we saw Killian Dain? He was getting brained to the car door thanks to Pete Dunne. Find out in a short while after this that Pete Dunne and Killian Dain are going to go one-on-one later on tonight. So that should be a bit of a brawl. Back to the ring now, and Jake Atlas is taking on Isaiah Swerve Scott in Cruiserweight Division action. The commentators mention that Kurt Stallion is the top contender for the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. You'll be forgiven for not knowing that, because with the exception of this line and a mention by Santos Escobar in a segment about 3 or 4 weeks ago, there's been no real talk of Kurt Stallion on NXT. But he's been doing some great stuff on 205 Live, the home of the Cruiserweight division. He's the #1 contender now as a result of a match on there. Just seems strange that we haven't had as much synergy between NXT and 205 Live, since the Cruiserweight Championship is now an NXT belt. This doesn't seem to be that much love given to 205 Live on NXT broadcasts. Either way, Kurt Stallion's the #1 contender, and I digress. Good match with these guys. Early 2 count for Swerve off of a rolling flatliner. Early 2 count for Jake off of a suplex bomb. End comes very suddenly with Swerve going for a magistral cradle and Atlas moving the momentum and turning it into a cover for himself and getting the 1, 2, 3. Atlas picks up the win and Swerve looks livid. He looks very much like he's going to batter Jake Atlas. Atlas offers a handshake, Swerve ignores it and storms off up the ramp. This was a B for me, some really good stuff with these guys, but otherwise a very standard television match with some high spots in it. I like the slow build of Jake Atlas, continuing to move up the ladder. Interested to see what they do with Swerve here. He very much seems like somebody who's lost his way, and they're playing that into the character. A heel turn, maybe? Or even a heel swerve. Nah, that won't catch on. Tommaso Ciampa is chatting backstage. He says he's looking to the future, and the future is Cameron Grimes. He calls him the squeakiest wheel in the shed, and says a lot of time insecurity is disguising itself as confidence. Later tonight, He'll find out which it is for Cameron Grimes. Match between these two later on. Very, very nice. In the ring, it's Everrise versus Imperium versus the Grizzled Young Veterans in triple threat tag team action. Everrise were playing silly buggers with GYV and Imperium the other week, so that's why this is all going down. We see Everrise get a shoeing from both teams to start with, and then they hide away in most of this match, letting Imperium and the Grizzled Young Veterans fight it out amongst themselves. Every so often jumping in there to get a cheap shot in there or to attempt a pin. There's a bit where we get a double down and they get in there to try and take over in the match, but they get beaten up and pushed away. We see a bit as well where we see Parker get into the ring just as Imperium hits a wheelbarrow bomb. Which I thought, like a wheelbarrow DDT rather, like a bomb DDT type. It was a good move from Imperium. Tries to steal the cover to no avail. Ends up being the one that eats the ticket to mayhem from the Grizzled Young Veterans. 1, 2, 3, GYV winning this week. This match was a B- for me. I like the creativity of how Everrise played into this match, sort of being the cowards on the outside. But two heel teams, no matter how good they are, it will always fall a bit flat for me. Three heel teams falls even flatter. Grizzled Young Veterans have come back and just mixed it up with two bad guy teams, and I don't really feel like anything during this match. It's a B- because the in-ring stuff, the wrestling from Everrise, Imperium, the Grizzled Young Veterans was good, but there was just this lack of fire. You know, the stuff was good, but it's three heel teams fighting for nothing, essentially. We get a recap of WarGames, and then we cut to Toni Storm chatting to Mackenzie Mitchell. She sees Ember Moon in the rearview mirror now and wants to become the NXT Women's Champion. She is stepped up to by Io Shirai backstage, who says, "I don't have any problem with you, I just don't like you," and then bops her in the face. They end up fighting into the Capitol Wrestling Center, and Shirai looks like she's going to hit an over the moonsault on Toni Storm, but Storm rolls out of the ring. And here comes Ember Moon. Shades of the heel turn that Storm did on Moon. She grabs Toni, throws her into the proverbial wolves, where she eats the over the moonsault. Nice little bit of revenge for Ember Moon in that one. Nice little segment here, and I like the mix-up of the women's division here. We'll talk more about that in our main event. Cameron Grimes takes on Tommaso Ciampa next, and in an echo from previous weeks, as the match is getting underway with some solid grapples, Timothy Thatcher heads down to the ring, same as Ciampa did during one of his matches recently, pulls up a chair and just watches. We see Grimes take a powder at one point and Ciampa gives chase. We see Grimes run around Thatcher and then bop Ciampa in the face. Ciampa makes a comeback after the break, hitting those million clotheslines where he bounces off the ropes and keeps hitting the clothesline over and over and over again. We see Grimes use a unique counter out of a sunset flip to get a near fall, but Ciampa's back in control pretty quick after that. Slaps the bejesus out of Grimes on the top rope and dumps him to the floor. And then here comes Tyler Rust, the newly christened Tyler Rust, one of the trainees of Timothy Thatcher. And it looks like he's going to try and attack Ciampa. But he ends up getting caught in Willow's bell. Looks like he's going to get dropped. But there's Grimes with the side swipe. He then throws Ciampa into the ropes. Grimes is looking for the cave-in, but Ciampa rolls under the ropes. Grimes gives chase. Ciampa rolls back into the ring. And as Grimes is getting back into the ring, Ciampa moves quick and buff Willow's bell onto Grimes for the 1, 2, 3. Match 1 for Tommaso Ciampa. Stare down with Thatcher, who says he has nothing to do with the run-in from just now, but Ciampa will not take his eyes off Thatcher as he heads off to the back. Cameron Grimes is livid with Timothy Thatcher, turns him round, starts reading him the riot act for coming out during his match. Thatcher responds silently by grabbing the leg of Grimes and twisting the ankle, leaving Grimes in a heap on the floor. This was a B for me. I liked the energy that these guys had for a TV match. This was put together really well. I thought Thatcher and Ciampa have more of a story to tell. That was certainly the impression I got at the end of this. Maybe we'll see them in the fight pit sooner rather than later. And a loss doesn't hurt Cameron Grimes either. I've said this before. Grimes is one of those guys that can lose a couple of matches, but still continue on a road well-travelled all the way to the moon. Raquel Gonzalez backstage says WarGames was the best night of her life, but it came at a cost because Dakota Kai was injured by Ember Moon. Revenge is coming for Ember Moon in our main event tonight as she clashes with the big RG. And then we get something that really jumps out on NXT this week. I've been preaching how much I love these segments that Xia Li and Boa are doing. The ones with the master, where there is this mysterious leader who are training them incredibly hard. They're groveling and crying through most of these segments. At one point, they're being dunked underwater. This week, we've got Boa being beaten with a kendo stick to the point where he's screaming in pain and there's welts all over his back and blood on his hands and his arms. Then you've got Xia Li, who has her fists taped up and she's punching these wooden blocks and she's kicking this wooden post. And the master is behind her, telling her to hit harder. And Xia Li is covered in sweat. She's crying, and her fists are bloody. Like there is blood running down her hands and her arms and on her legs. She just looks a state, and she's just gutting out this awful experience. You see the pain etched on these guys' faces as this segment begins. But then as it goes on, you notice that their expression disappears. Like they become pretty emotionless to everything that's happening. And by the end of the segment, you've got Boa with a mouth full of blood being beaten up with this kendo stick, but barely saying anything. And then Xia Li, who is bloodied and face just covered in sweat and tears, and she's clenching this bloodied fist. And that is how we build to this segment. Then just as soon as it arrives, it goes again. Wow! This was amazing. This was gritty. It was earthy. It was a bit unsettling. It certainly wasn't your family wrestling product that WWE likes to put out. This was something very special. I've loved these segments, and this might have been my favourite one so far. Do seek this out. If you watch anything from NXT this week, do seek this out. I swear, after all they've done here in building Boa and Xia Li into these killing machines, then if they don't become champions by the end of this, I'll be very disappointed. Like there is something special about all of this, and we've still got the unveil of the leader of all of this as well. That hasn't been revealed yet. Oh, this is a great story. Remember last year when I did Tiered? When I did Tiered with Ross and we talked about the NXT roster, and I said Boa should be in the best tier? I stand by it. To the ring now with Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, and Austin Theory. Theory joining up with the Garganos and Hartwell at WarGames. It was me all along, Austin. I love what you did there, Austin. That was a very cool line. We have nice colour coordinating, by the way. Lovely pink jackets with white shirts for the Garganos, and black shirts with, grey shirts with black trousers for the future. The future folk. Johnny Gargano has been saying for a long time that he's going to show them the way. And he says proudly, this is the way. They are a faction called The Way. Indy Hartwell, Austin Theory, Candice LeRae, and Johnny Gargano are The Way. Presumably the Mandalorian and Uganda Knuckles being added to that, with a song sung by Dionne Warwick. Just putting that out there. So they're in their pomp here, and they're celebrating the big results from WarGames. Candice becoming the queen of the cage, and Johnny Gargano becoming the North American champion. Johnny even presents his wife, who has a broken arm from the WarGames match, with a special trophy. At the top of the trophy is a doll's head that represents Shotzi Blackheart. These guys are all brilliant here. There's a whole bit where Johnny Gargano is talking, saying, winning the North American Championship, that's the way. Becoming the queen of the WarGames, that's the way. And then Austin Theory gets close to the mic and goes, the Milky Way. So Austin Theory's playing the idiot, in case you weren't sure. And Indy Hartwell cushions the tension by going, anyway, and then they move on. So we all get their roles in the faction, nice and quick. It's cool. So as they're talking and celebrating and loving life, here comes Damian Priest, who asks if Austin Theory has still got the lead pipe he hit him with at WarGames because he's going to push it up his bottom. He doesn't get a chance to push it up his bottom, luckily, because he gets attacked from behind by Karrion Kross. Kross batters Damian Priest and ends up powerbombing him through the stage. We go from there to Karrion Kross making his way through the back, into the car park, into a waiting car, and driving off with Scarlett into the inky blackness of the Floridian night. B+ for this segment. I thought the stuff with The Way I really like. The name I think is going to grow nice and quick. I think. We'll find out together. I like the faction. I like the elements of this. It's a cool group of people. Karrion Kross's return brings the grade down a little bit, right? I felt a bit underwhelmed by Karrion Kross's comeback here, and I'm really happy to see Kross back. He's going to make a significant impact in NXT, and that's cool. But the way that we represented Karrion Kross, like the way he left with the championship in the center of the ring, smoke billowing everywhere, an hourglass, and like flames on the Tron screens and all that. Like, I expected him to come back via burning down a small village, you know? I expected something a bit more mythical and monstrous from Karrion Kross's return as opposed to a run-in. I mean, and a powerbomb through the stage, fine. But you know what? That says something about how high my expectations were when a powerbomb through the stage just didn't quite cut it for me. I expected something a bit more mythical and magical from the Karrion Kross return. Burning a small village, I think, was on the top of my list. Regardless, very, very good segment. Tyler Rust was about to be interviewed by Mackenzie Mitchell, but he's interrupted by Malcolm Bivens, who says, "Hey, I gave you my business card last week, and we're going to talk business. You showed great initiative out there. Let's have a chat." And they go to have a little conversation. Bivens in a managerial role in 2021. Chef's kiss. That is a thing that definitely needs to happen. I'm a massive fan of what Bivens can bring to the table. Him and Rust could be a diamond in the rust, if you will. That's rubbish. But either way, I'm happy with those guys working together. That's a nice combo. Pete Dunne takes on Killian Dain next. This is Dain's match to start off with. Very aggressive, beating Dunne in and around the ring. It isn't until Dunne drives Dain into the turnbuckle post that Dunne starts to take control. He's wearing down Killian Dain, stamping on the fingers, rest holds, the whole plethora. Killian's comeback, spelt with 2 Ks, sees him landing a uranagi over the ropes. So Dain's on the outside of the ring on the apron. Pete's in the ring and he hits a uranagi onto the floor, which I thought looked really nice. Follows it up with a senton and gets a powerbomb for a near fall. Dain will attempt an Ulster plantation, but then we see Pete turn it into an armbar. He turns that into a power bomb. He seems a bit unstoppable as he goes up for the Vader bomb. But here come the Britam Brawlers. But before they can really run interception, Drake Maverick is there with a steel chair. However, the numbers are overwhelming. Drake is getting beaten up until Dain comes to turn the tide. But that's too much of a distraction. He gets back into the ring to get a cheap shot by Dunne and the bitter end for the 1, 2, 3. And Pete Dunne has beat Killian Dain with some assistance from the Britam Brawlers. Another B+ this week. All the B+ this week, isn't it? Really solid match between these two. Dunne getting the win without jobbing out Dain, I think moves Dunne up the card. And we get to see, I think, sooner rather than later, Drake and Dain challenging Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch for the tag team titles. That's a match I am happy to see. Next week, we're getting Damian Priest teaming with Leon Ruff versus Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. Or at least, so we thought. That wasn't until Damian Priest got powerbombed through the stage. Gargano's find this hilarious. The way approaching Leon Ruff and saying, "Hey, it's going to be a handicap match next week. Hey, well done you." As they leave, Kushida arrives and says, "Kushida will be your partner." And they fist bump to seal the deal. This was cool. Kushida stepping in to replace Damian Priest, which I think is a nice replacement. Good substitution. Main event o'clock, and it's Raquel Gonzalez taking on Ember Moon. Ember is doing her best here to avoid the power game of Gonzalez, but she falls asunder when she goes for a code breaker off the top, only for Gonzalez just to toss her to the ground. RG is a beast here, barely leaving her feet. She does so to hit moves, and just before the break, where she gets speared through the ropes to hit the ground outside. But apart from that, she's barely off her feet in this match, and she is dominant on Ember Moon. When we come back from break, she's got the gory stretch applied, breaking the back of Ember. Ember manages to push back with a head scissors into the corner, lands a tornado suplex and a dive outside of the ring. Ember starts climbing the rigging at the CWC, presumably looking for a dive of some sort to take out Raquel Gonzalez, but Gonzalez almost plucks her out of the air and lawn darts her into the turnbuckle post for a near fall. Look wild that did. Ember pushes back in this one. She attempts the Eclipse, jumps into the air, grabs the head of Gonzalez, but can't bring her down. Gonzalez stands steadfast and keeps Ember Moon up there with her. Goes to turn it into a powerbomb, but Ember Moon is able to roll through into a sunset flip for a 2 count. But shortly after that, Gonzalez hits that big old one-arm powerbomb for the 1, 2, 3, pinning Ember Moon in the center of the ring. Big win for Gonzalez. Here comes Toni Storm after the match to pick at the bones of Ember Moon. Before she gets a chance to, Rhea Ripley's music hits, and Ripley makes her way to the ring. And we briefly get a stare down between Ripley and Toni, thinking, oh, this is old NXT UK shenanigans. Should be a good time had by all. But then Raquel Gonzalez pushes Toni to one side and steps in front of her. And we go, oh, yes, Titan battle. Let's do this. Let's do this one. They stare each other down in the ring before Gonzalez takes her leave. And the last shot we see is of Ripley and Gonzalez giving each other evils. We're getting ready for one more big match, I think, between those two. Loads of great moving parts in the women's division at the moment. Main event for me was a B+, because it took true advantage of those moving parts. Some really good action from Ember Moon and from Raquel Gonzalez, who I think's been a real force at the tail end of 2020. I've really enjoyed her work, and I'm excited to see her do some big stuff in 2021. And overall this week, NXT was a B+, you'll be surprised to hear. A lot of B+ this time round. Well-paced show. Some interesting developments post-WarGames. Nothing that was, like, mind-blowing. It was kind of mind-bubbling, nothing mind-blowing in here. Kross's return felt a touch underwhelming, but it was in a segment that was very good, so it kind of boosts that a little bit. I thought that Raquel's push feels right in the main event. I really like the way that that's done, as well as the aforementioned The Way. I like their work as well. Xia Li and Boa stood out. Go find that segment. I think I can't say enough good things about it. It's something very different for WWE in 2020 at the very least. You know, very, very different. So, all right this week. As I say, mind-bubbling, not mind-blowing. Stay safe. Have a good Thursday. Love you, bye.